All right, everybody. So welcome to the first student seminar of fall 2020. I'm Lena Johnson. I'm the administrative assistant at Maryland Robotics Center, for those of you who don't already know me. Today we have an awesome speech today on a really cool topic, I think, personally, is really awesome. We have Xiaotian Xu, who is the PhD or one of the PhD students working with Dr. Diaz-Mercado in the collaborative controls and robotics laboratory. He's working on multi-agent control using coverage over time-varying domains. I read the paper on this, and I thought it was very awesome the way that you guys were controlling robots, multiple robots at once. And I'm hoping that everybody else enjoys this as much as I do. So I'm going to hand it over to the speaker. Just one quick thing. If you have any questions for the speaker, please put them at the bottom of your screen. There should be a Q&A button. Go on ahead and click that and put your questions in there. And I will ask them at the end of the seminar, and hopefully we'll get through all of them. So, okay, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Lena. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining me for the MRC student seminar. My name is Xiaotian Xu, and my advisor is Professor Yancy Diaz-Mercado. We are from mechanical engineering, and we also with the collaborative controls and robotics lab. Today, I'm going to present the work, which is, as you can see, the title as multi-agent control using coverage of time-varying domains. One of the topics we are interested in our lab is controlling the swarm robotics systems. In this particular work, we are trying to address the question that's how to manipulate a swarm robotics. We try not to control individual robots. Instead, we set an objective to the whole system, and the robots coordinate their motions with each other in order to achieve the objective. The way we think about this problem is we abstract the swarm of robots as a mass. We are not trying to control every particle in the mass. We view them as a whole set or the union of some subsets, like the kinetic sand in the picture here. Instead of considering each particle of sand, we can squeeze the sand and knead them to be some shapes. And then we can directly manipulate these shapes. For a mass, we can set the density of particles. In other words, we control the concentration of the particle, which can be used to achieve different formations. And this is an approach used in the past. In this work, we are using a slightly different approach. We are trying to control the boundary of the swarms in order to manipulate the position, scale, and shape of swarms. And we are going to show you how do we do this by using coverage control. First of all, I'm going to provide a short introduction on coverage control. So what is coverage control? The coverage control optimally distributes a robotic team on an interested area, and it allows the robots in the team to coordinate with each other. It has wide applications, such as environmental monitoring and exploration, search and rescue after some natural disasters, and so on. And in this work, we are going to take advantage of the coverage control to develop a scalable mechanism to influence a swarm of robots in terms of density and boundary. Mathematically, the coverage control is trying to minimize the locational cost H, which is an area integral for every point Q inside the domain. The locational cost here is modified because we are considering the time-varying convex domain D. Inside this domain, we can define the density function, phi. The density function denotes the relative importance of each point in the domain. A point with higher value of density means this point is more important. And then the robots will gather around this point The objective of minimizing the locational cost in terms of the positions of robots can be solved by Bernoulli tessellation of the domain. The robots is going to be in charge of a portion of the domain, and in that portion, every point is said to be nearest to this particular robot. Therefore, the objective becomes finding a best configuration of the robotic team such that the locational cost is minimized given the time-varying domain and the time-varying density. It is a well-known result that the necessary condition for achieve the local minimum of the locational cost is the centroidal-Bernoulli tessellation configuration. In other words, the position of each robot is on the center of mass of its Bernoulli cell. Look at the expression of the center of mass here. It is a fraction of two area integrals whose domain of integration is the Bernoulli cell, which is state dependent and time dependent. And the integrands of both integrals are time dependent through the density function. So to enable the robots to track the time varying state dependent references, intuitively, the controller should include following features. First is tracking feedback, which is straightforward. We need to close loop to track something. Second is tracking feed forward. This allows us to allow us to capture the time variation of the domain and the density, such that the robots can maintain the centroid-Bernoulli tessellation configuration. And the last is coordination among agents, which allow us to take into account the state dependency in the Bernoulli tessellation, and again to maintain centroid-Bernoulli tessellation configuration. The coverage control law is given by this expression. It looks similar to the control law proposed in the past. The difference here is in the last partial derivative, which solves the problem of time-varying domains we are trying to address here. As we can see in this box, it is a standard Lois algorithm, which drives agents to the centroidal-Bernoulli tessellation. And we have a feed-forward term for capturing the evolution of the domain and the density. And we have a matrix accounts for the state dependency and provides coordination among agents. It has been shown in the cited reference here that it actually can be truncated by using Newman series in order to set the desired level of coordination. For example, only consider the first two terms from Newman series means only the coordination between nearest neighbors is used, and therefore the control law becomes decentralized. In this work, we showed that with the new feed-forward term, the agent still be able to exponentially track the centroid-Bernoulli tessellation configuration. To account for time-varying domains, we have the following proposition. It says that given the normal velocity of almost every point on the domain of the time-varying, on the boundary of the time-varying domain, the feed-forward term can be found as follows. From this expression, we can notice that the first term accounts for the time-varying density function. The second term accounts for the time-varying domain. It can also be found that only the agents whose Bernoulli cells share boundaries with the time-varying domain are explicitly influenced by the domain. The agents who do not share boundary with the domain is not affected directly by the time variations of the domain, but they will finally get the domain information that will be broadcasted through their neighbors. So due to the decentralized control law, the control scheme presented here is pretty scalable. Here in the simulation, 100 robots are covering a square domain moving along a circle. We find that under uniform density and 2D convex polygonal domains, the complexity of our controller is constant time in the number of agents. The scalability is contributed by the analytical expression of every term in the control law, together with the nature of the decentralized control law and the Voronoi tessellation. Each agent only needs partial Voronoi diagram. For a particular agent, it needs its neighbors to enclose its Voronoi cell, and its neighbors to enclose its neighbors' Voronoi cells. And as a well-known result from computational geometry, that the average number of neighbors of an agent in the Voronoi diagram is 6, and the number of neighbors is 12. So we just need to use as much information as from 17 agents instead of considering the overall swarm robotic systems. We implement our controller on the real robots. The first demo we show here is we define a motion plan for the domain. In the domain starts from the blue box on the top left, avoids the red obstacles, and reaches the goal position, which is the green box. In our lab, we have an overhead projector to visualize these domains, boxes, and obstacles. The domain is independent on the number of robots. We use 3, 4, 5, and 6 robots here. The robots can efficiently track the motion of the domain and figure out their motions to form the centroid Voronoi tessellation configuration over the time-varying domain. So if we have a swarm robots, we do not have to worry about controlling the individual robots. We are manipulating the swarm of robots as a whole. The second demo, here we implement the controller by using human input. We use a cell phone to provide reference signals to the domain to control the motion of the domain. We try to control the domain from the right to the left while avoiding the obstacles. The robot will capture the motion of the domain and always stay inside the domain. Here we do not allow the domain to go into the obstacles such that it automatically guarantees the safety of the robots, because the robots always stay inside the domain. So far, we consider the time-varying domain to always be convex. However, in many practical applications, the time-varying domain could become non-convex when it moves around in an environment with obstacles. When the time-varying domain becomes non-convex, several issues might happen. For example, the center of mass of some Voronoi cells may locate outside the Voronoi cells, which could drive the robots along some undesired trajectories when the robots are trying to approach to the center of mass. Here I am going to provide a brief idea about how to perform the coverage when the time-varying domain becomes non-convex. Basically, a one-to-one map phi, which we call it diffeomorphism, can be defined to transform the non-convex domain into a convex one, such that the controller designed for the convex domain can be modified and utilized. And the motion of the robots in the transformed convex domain will be brought back to the real world, but the inverse of the transformation. As you can see in this box, it is exactly the same controller we just talked about. And we have an inverse of Jacobian matrix, which allows agents to move around the non-convexity of the domain. And we have an additional feed-forward term to account for the evolution of the transformation. The proof of scalability is also valid when the time varying domain becomes non-convex. In the simulation here, 100 robots are covering a domain when with a time varying non-convexity. On the right, the coverage is performed on the transformed convex domain. On the left, we show the motion of robots in the real world. As we can see, the agent can always stay inside the domain, capture the evolution of the domain, and turn around to avoid the non-convexity. Also, here is an implementation with the motion plan for the domain, which allows the domain to become non-convex when it moves from the top left to the green box on the right side of the workspace. On the left, we show the virtual transformed convex domain, and on the right, we show the actual domain and the actual motion of the robots. We can see that the virtual robots perform coverage of the transformed convex domain to accommodate the non-convexity in the real world. When the motion of the virtual robots is brought back to the real world by the inverse of the transformation, the robots in the real world can coordinate with each other to figure out their motion and bypass the obstacles. Okay, now it is time to conclude. We presented a scalable algorithm for manipulating large teams of robots via coverage control of time varying domains and densities. The controller can drive robots to exponentially track the central interval tessellation configuration and the analytical expressions of the controller on the uniform density. Gives us the constant time implementation, and this contributes the scalability of our algorithm. We also briefly introduced the method to adapt the non-convex time varying domains. And finally, what we want to highlight here is that the coverage domain and the density can be used as exogenous input to manipulate swarms by executing motion plans or human inputs. Thank you again for joining my presentation. For more information, you can visit the website of our lab. I will be happy to take any questions. Thank you again.
Okay, awesome. We do have a few questions here.
Yes.
So are the obstacles known beforehand, in which case is an artificial potential field or related method implemented?
In our implementation, we set it as a known environment, but definitely you can apply some motion plan technique to use, like the artificial potential field or some other path planning algorithm to accommodate this this algorithm. So the main idea is that the motion of the domain can be used as an input to the system, which is independent on the size of the system. Yes, does
Awesome.
that answer the question? Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, one more. Great presentation. Which term in the control law is for handling non-convex domain?
Yes, let me bring that back. Oops. I think I'm encounter a technical problem. Let me show again. Oops. I'm sorry. Okay, I'm
Is it not
having
able?
some, yes, having some technical problem here.
Oh no.
So yeah,
Oh, there we go.
I got it. Yeah. So this controller you can see in the middle box, it is the exactly same controller as we defined for the convex domain. So when we define a transformation to transform everything from the non-convex domain to the convex domain, we have this matrix Jacobian, inverse of the Jacobian matrix, which will allow the robots in the real world to turn around the obstacles or bypass the non-convexity. And also we have this feed-forward term to track the time variation of the transformation, because when the domain is moving, the transformation, it is time varying as well. So we have a feed-forward term to track that time variation in the transformation.
Awesome. Okay, so before we close, does anyone? Oh, here we go. Is there any collision avoidance technique associated with this method?
The answer is yes and no. The coverage control itself will provide the collision avoidance for a particle. So that's the particle means we neglect the size of the robots. So we do can implement some techniques for a robot with finite size, but we didn't do it right here. Yes.
Awesome. And I have one last question. When you are implementing the control law on the platform that you guys have with your robots, are the robots, what kind of sensors do they use? Is it optical? Is it just programmed in, or?
We haven't used the sensors equipment on the robots. We just we're programmed in the code. Yeah. So because everything, the obstacles is visualized by a projector. So it's we didn't use sensor to sensor a image on the ground.
Awesome. So the projector, so what the projector projects onto the ground is more of a representation of what the control law is actually doing at that time.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Awesome. So does anyone else have any? Oh, here we go. What would be the performance when the domain is non-convex, such that drawing only one line won't make a convex, like in X shape?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure I understand your question correctly, but I'm trying to answer it. So for like X shape, the most critical thing in this method is how you define the transformation. Maybe you can make the centroid of this X shape to be the you can trying to extend every point outside to make it a convex. I don't know if that answers your question. So you can start from the center of the X shape and drag it outside radially. So that could make it a convex shape.
Okay. I don't think we have any more questions. Any last questions, anyone? Okay, I'm not seeing anything pop up. All right, so Xiaotian, thank you again so much for your presentation and for, okay, I'm gonna close questions in a second. There's one last question. Yeah. What will happen if the goal is not reachable? Will the robot stop at the nearest point of the goal?
I would say yeah, that's a good question. So we do so when you applying some path planning technique, there are maybe some local minimum for robots to stop at the local minimum instead of reaching the goal. But this is the primary this is not the primary concern of our work here. I would say that that's a problem for the path planning algorithm development project. But yes, in many cases, when you implement a path planning algorithm, it could be set your robots in some local minimum instead of the goal. Yeah.
All right. Okay, so we're going to close questions right now. Again, thank you so much, Xiaotian, for just agreeing to do this seminar. I know that everything's crazy right now, but it's great to have
Thank you, Lena. Thank you all the attendants. Yeah.
All right, everyone. So we're going to close the seminar now. Thank you for attending, and I look forward to the next seminar, which should be in a couple of weeks, and I believe that topic is also going to be pretty awesome. So thank you all again.
Yes, thank you all. Thank you, Lena.